Hi, for this week's discussion, I chose to answer option number 2, which is what surprised, intrigued, or disturbed you the most in Chapter 4 of the American Yawp, Colonial Society, explained using examples from the source. So I wrote down a few things as I was reading that surprised me, and one was how sugar represented wealth back then, because I think today in our society now, obviously we have a lot more resources and materials now, but sugar is, when we think of like the word sugar or the material sugar, it leads to like candy and like snacks, which are more related to the idea of cheap food. And back then, sugar was something that was very valuable, I guess, to them, and something that represented wealth. And obviously the wealthy wanted to have as much as they could to show off kind of to the other classes. And I thought it was interesting that they got all the sugar from the Caribbean, and they actually everybody cared more about getting sugar, and that was all provided from the Caribbean colonies, and not the Caribbean colonies, sorry, just from the Caribbean, and then brought over to the 13 colonies in America. And I thought it was interesting that that one product was sourced only from the Caribbean, and it wasn't really made in the in America at the 13 colonies, so they looked to the Caribbean for all of their needs. And then it also surprised me, another quote I wrote down, but what surprised, no, sorry, those are my notes. One of the quotes I wrote down was, those living on the continent relied on the Caribbean colonists to satisfy their craving for sugar and other goods like mahogany. British colonists in the Caribbean began cultivating sugar in the 1640s, and sugar took the Atlantic world by storm. So it was a huge thing, apparently. And then what also surprised me was how financially unstable America was leading into the American Revolution. They were really in need of help and assistance in order to fund the war and fund their soldiers and equipment and all that. And that grew into like more like political anger and frustration with like British taxes and all of that, and it was hard for them to keep calm about that. And then that led into, I can see how that led into like civil rights, so I thought that was really interesting. And then I just thought it was interesting how it was all like more, it was about more than just like taxes and money. Like it was about people and families and getting food and the American dream in its fullness. And then I also wrote down that slavery, I thought this was interesting, the entire state of South Carolina, the population was mostly enslaved African Americans, and it barely had any, the population was all slaves, which is insane, because when you think of the whole population, you'd think of people, not just slaves. And that's my time, but